Boom, I'm in the room. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Everyday Conversations Regarding Mental Health. Now, you're here because there's nothing on the telly. And I'm here because I'm live from the old Heale Manor. Now, this evening, I've got a couple of guests coming in. And we're going to be looking at a tricky little subject. We're looking at overcoming depression. And part of that is looking at from somebody that's really depressed, that's thinking about taking their own lives, and how to come through it. So this show obviously is all about mental health, mental well-being, and trying to take the stigma out of it. And that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to help people along the way. So shall I get my first guest in? So without further ado, here he is. Joe, welcome. How you doing?
What's going on? I'm doing great, brother. How are you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing okay, actually. Just about struggling. This time of year I always struggle with the old rheumatoid and the joints seizing up and everything like that with the cold weather. But yeah, there's no point in dripping about it. Say Marines drip.
Yep, you just
Infantry
gotta work.
soldiers just get on with it.
Yep, exactly.
So, Joe, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, bit about your background, and where you come fit into this conversation we're going to have this evening about overcoming depression. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
the platform is yours.
Well, my name is Joe Malone. I'm the CEO of JM Training in Southern Cross, where we teach people how to be safe against violence and violent crime through discipline, habits, mindset, belief systems, and ultimately skill sets as well. I, as a kid growing up in Chicago, I got addicted to some pretty heavy drugs at a very early age. I was shooting up heroin by the time I was 16 years old. And by the time I was 19, I had detoxed, quit, joined the Marine Corps. Ended up doing 13 years in the U.S. Marines, 7 deployments. Most of my time was in the Marine Special Operations Command. So I got to go a lot of interesting places, work with a lot of really interesting people. But unfortunately, it took a pretty heavy toll on me, mentally and emotionally and physically, which, of course, all three are connected. And during the end of my tenure, I was in the traumatic brain injury clinic for 18 months, learned a lot about neuroscience, started to explore science a little bit more in terms of like physics and the quantum realm. And I was able to take myself out of the manic depressive state I was in. I was on 26 medications. I was putting a gun in my mouth daily, just trying to muster up the courage to pull the trigger, which I'm very thankful I didn't. Lost all my money doing high risk stock options trading, went into crazy amounts of debt, was living out of a tent on a beach, all after 13 years in the military and all these deployments. So I just kind of was hopeless and directionless. But based off of the principles that I learned from the scientific field, I was able to create systems and habits that ultimately pulled me out of it. And I got to tell you, man, life is pretty damn good. I would have never seen myself being here a couple of years ago, that's for sure.
Sounds like you've been through the mill a bit. So,
I'd say so. It's there were some pretty, it wasn't even like one or two really destitute nights. It was years of just, why am I here? Slamming down bottles of booze, popping prescription meds, just living a very hard and a very fast lifestyle, hoping to die. And fortunately, that didn't happen.
that that's such a common story for veterans, guys that have
Hmm.
been through particularly sort of combat roles. They come back out of it, and we see it across. I mean, American Army, the sort of the Western powers, really. I mean, the British Army. I've seen quite a lot of it over the years, where guys have gone out. They've done a pretty tough tour of Afghan or Iraq or even the Balkans back in the day. They come out, they go, come back do a normal type exercise, get totally disillusioned with it, chuck the papers in, get out, and then they fall to bits. I had a similar experience when I left. I finished up the army in 2018. In 2020, I had a bit of a wobble. Um, it wasn't as drastic as yours, but I sought help because I'd been in welfare for 8 years. I knew the signs and symptoms that I was struggling, and I got some help. But it was kind of the wrong sort of help for me. I'd been saw my doctor. He signed me over to the psychiatric people. They were civvies, so they didn't understand my issues. And it wasn't until I had a chat with a couple of mates that I've been playing soldiers with that put it all into perspective. And I think
Hmm.
that's what helped me. But I've seen so many guys that when they come out, they go through a meltdown. They lose everything. That once the rug's pulled from under them, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. They haven't got that support network with their mates and everything, and they don't want to get touched because the guys are still doing stuff. I guess that's exactly where you were at that stage when you start to go downhill after you left.
Yeah. I had a lack of purpose and a loss of kinship. So the combination of a lack of purpose and a loss of positive social interaction, a community, it's important to have those things, both of those things, purpose and a community. And when you lose both of those at the same time, and that's all you've really ever known your entire life, in conjunction with living, especially at this very high, intense rate of existence, skydiving, scuba diving, cliff jumping, combat, getting shot at, losing people, loving people, it takes a really heavy toll on your endocrine, your hormonal system, your brain, your
Mm,
body, your way of life, your existence. And then to have, like you so eloquently just said a moment ago, to have it pulled out from under you, yeah, a lot of guys end up and women end up spiraling out of control.
mm. So normally it's sort of a couple of years after you're out that it really sort of it bites, and I've seen that a lot, particularly for guys that have done a long period, and quite often guys that have done a short period. They've been in that intensive operational aspect. They got disillusioned, chucked the papers in, gone into Civvy Street, ain't really fitted in. Everything's different, and then finally, they crack, and things start going
Hmm.
downhill for them. So yeah, so I can see exactly where you've come from. So how did you finally sort of pull yourself out of it?
So by understanding how the brain functions and by understanding a couple of key principles, one, our brain's priorities. Our brain has two major priorities: conserve energy and keep us safe from death and harm. And it does this in a number of different ways. Just to keep things surface level here, though, for the purpose of today, you got to know how the brain functions, and you also have to know what the brain is. It's this connection, these trillions, literally trillions of connections within this mass here that we have sitting in between our skull. All these connections are based off of electricity. So neurons, which are the cells that make up your brain, the neurons that fire together wire together, as Dr. Joe Dispenza likes to say. So if you're living in a consistent and perpetual state of negativity, if your thoughts are that of the past, of things that upset you, that has a physiological effect on the hormones that you begin to produce, which then therefore has profound effect on the actions that you take daily in your life. So if I'm constantly thinking about an event that happened 2 years ago that just destroyed my life, my wife cheated on me, or I lost a really good friend, something of that nature, then I'm continuously producing the neurochemical disposition in my body that took place 2 years ago. And that's going to create a lot of stress, oxidative stress on your internal system, your hormones, your regulatory systems, and it strengthens those connections in your brain to where you automatically now become default into that belief system. Because when we consciously think about things as humans, we burn more calories per gram of body weight than any other organ in the body is the brain. It's this major caloric burning machine. However, when we do something 10,000 times over, whatever the number is, it becomes a habit. Habit is nothing more than a simpler way of saying programming of the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is a series and a bundle of neurons in your brain where the brain basically said, I'm done thinking about this consciously, burning all these calories. I want to preserve these calories that I can, puts it into the subconscious. That's why things become habitual. We don't even think about habits. It's unconscious behaviors that we perform daily. It burns less calories in the brain. So it frees up space in the brain so we can concentrate on other things that we're not as proficient as. But this isn't just for physical actions and things that we do throughout our day. This also goes for your thoughts. And if you continuously live in this negative perpetual loop of going back to the past or falsely projecting on things in the future, which is where a lot of anxiety comes from, then you're going to be consistently creating that environment around you, which is why it's so hard for so many people to change. The number one way that I found to change: exercise, physical exercise. I am yet to ever meet anybody who is not horribly depressed, addicted to drugs, living a life that they were not satisfied with, when they dedicated their life to insane physical fitness, they come out of it on top 10 out of 10 times. And the reason behind that is because when you exercise, it creates a neurochemical disposition. Everything comes down to what neurochemicals are in your body based off of the thoughts that you're having, which create the emotions that you have. So your thoughts affect your emotions, which affect your behavior. And that's how I format all of my training when it comes to lethality skills, is that you have to have the right mindset that can stimulate the correct emotion, which then therefore produces the outcome, the physical outcome. And everything starts from within. And when you develop that mental and emotional resiliency through physical resiliency development, exercise, because it's mentally and emotionally tough to push yourself to these new extremes, these new limits. Not only are you creating a positive neurochemical disposition in your body, one associated with love, kindness, and connectedness, but you're decreasing the one associated with depression, sadness, and anxiety. Both cannot coexist at the same time. One must be dominant. And when you are repetitively elevating those levels of positive neurochemicals in the body, well, what happens? It starts to become your natural belief system, your thought patterns, your physical habits, your emotional habits. And that's how I was able to, what I call realign. I call that the realignment process. You have your true self and actual self, the distance in between from your maximum potential and what you do on a daily basis, and the lies that you tell yourself, the promises you don't keep. It keeps you further and further away from that true self. And the area in between is where angst, depression, anxiety, all that comes from. And so in order to put yourself on that positive trajectory going back up, you need to be involved in physical exercise, have a little bit of understanding of how the brain works, and stick to it consistently over an extended period of time. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And before you know it, everything in your life is going to start to change. I am absolute 100% living proof of that.
Brilliant. So let's say you've got yourself through it by taking yourself down the gym and giving yourself a proper beasting.
Yep. And don't get me wrong, I didn't just go to the gym one day and start doing this. It doesn't happen that way. It's very difficult. But what you need to do, and this is what I help people out with, is develop systems that you could easily implement in your day. So the first thing I tell any client of mine is wake up at this time. I always encourage people to wake up before 4:55 a.m. I get up at about 2:45, 3 a.m. every single day. I have for years. There's a very small period of time where I broke that cycle, that pattern, but I get up super early because I love the morning time. I love the solace. I love being present with God alone, or your creator, whatever you want to call it. But I tell clients, you need to wake up at 4:55, depending on their work schedule, and drink a tall glass of water. That's your task every day for this week. And they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, I just paid you X amount of dollars to tell me to drink water. They're like, this is dumb. I'm like, listen to me. It's not about just drinking water, which, by the way, everybody should do when you wake up. You should drink a very tall glass of water. They say 8 ounces. I'm saying 20 ounces, because your body is 70, 90% water. So you need to hydrate in order to get your brain functioning properly. We can go into that another time in a different episode. There's a lot of science behind that. But waking up and doing something and then forcing yourself to drink that entire glass of water every single morning, now you're taking control of your mind. You're taking control of your body in that moment, which therefore then builds confidence, because confidence is nothing more than the perpetual maintenance of keeping promises to oneself. Your belief in yourself is where confidence comes from, and you believe in yourself just like you would believe in anybody else. If I tell you, Tim, I'm going to be there at 1 o'clock every single day for the next year, and I show up at 1 o'clock every single day for the next year, you're going to believe in me because you know that I hold my word, that I keep true. But the same thing goes internally for ourselves. So you wake up,
Yeah,
you drink the water, a week goes by, bam, now we're starting to build confidence, we build momentum, and now we can start adding on more things until you start to screw up. Then we dial it back, then we build into more things. And that's how you get yourself to the gym eventually on a consistent basis. Keep promises to yourself, build confidence in your self value.
brilliant. Also, by drinking water, you get rid of the toxins that's built up in your body overnight.
There's so many more aspects about just by drinking water that we do not even have the time to go into it, but it is so profoundly remarkable just by keeping your body well hydrated, all of the positive effects that take place because of it. Most people who tell me that they're depressed, they're not even hydrated. So how you even tell me you're depressed when you
Yeah,
can't even think clearly, you can't even think straight, because your thoughts again are going to control your emotions, which are going to control your actions. And it's about getting your mind right through the appropriate actions, small, easy steps, implementing them daily, building that momentum, building your confidence. And it starts with something as simple as drinking water.
fantastic. Well, Joe, I'll leave you there for a minute. I'm going to bring in our next guest, Anthony or AJ, and then we'll bring you back in a little while, and we'll carry
Cool.
on the conversation. So thanks very
Absolutely.
much for now.
Mhm.
So here we go then, Anthony. Hope it's going to work. There you go. AJ,
How we
good
doing,
evening.
Tim?
How you doing?
Great, great. Thanks for having me.
No, you're most welcome. So, Anthony, I'll do the same. I'll ask you a little bit, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and then we'll come in and have a conversation, and then we'll bring Joe in, and then we'll have a three-way chat. How's that sound?
So, sounds great. I appreciate it.
So, if
Yeah.
you can tell
So,
us a little bit,
for
yeah. So, if you can tell us
yeah,
a little bit about
absolutely.
yourself. You got a platform.
Yeah, appreciate it. So again, Anthony Godaire, AG, if it's easier. I'm just the average Joe. I'm coming out of Florida. Gone through a couple 9 to 5s. Never really found that clarity and confidence in my journey that I had been searching for, and I really just got tired of the ebbs and flows. I think for me, there's really nothing terribly too unique about my journey. Like I said, when I say average Joe, I mean average Joe. I went through, got my high school diploma, spent a little hazy semester in college a little bit before I just started getting into the 9 to 5 and trying to build up the career there. But I really kind of stumbled into any success that I've come into. And I'm very fortunate now to where I've taken that success from some of those 9 to 5s and now developed it into my own coaching to where I can help others with everything from career development and executive presence to mental health and suicide support.
That's terrific. So, from your point of view, then, you had a little bit of a downer a while back, didn't you?
Yeah. So, in all vulnerability, I had my own personal suicide attempt back in 2008, and obviously that's very aged now. That wasn't even really the bottom of the pit. Unfortunately, so I referenced some of those ebbs and flows. We're talking, yes, you've got the suicide attempt and being Baker acted and institutionalized and things like that for a period of time, but then you've got again the average Joe stuff, which is the failed relationships, the common stressors of the 9 to 5s, the self sabotaging tendencies, and really just navigating depression through the entirety of my life. Some of which was with medication, some of that was bucking very hard against using medication. But I finally got it right within the last couple of years, and that sort of inspired me. And it says, well, I got to be honest. I feel like I've wasted close to a decade of my life, and if I can do my part to be vulnerable and share my story and what I went through and what I've done, kind of to Joe's point on getting the reps in and getting that confidence and that clarity on the day to day, then maybe I can help someone else to avoid that entirely.
Hmm. So, so take you back a little bit. Do you know what the catalyst was originally? Why you were that depressed that you considered taking your own life? What was
You know,
going through your life at that stage to get you to that desperation point?
Sure. I think it was a combination of lack of clarity. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know why I was here, what I was doing. I just kind of followed with, whatever the mentors at the time had told me this is what success should look like, right? I never created my own definition. And when you stumble through something like that without clarity and then you run into a bunch of failure on top of it, that frustration really, really builds because now that resiliency isn't there that says I'm fighting for something of a deeper purpose, because you're almost living someone else's definition of success, right? You're just trying to go through the motions of what you think success looks like. You run into the failed relationships, you run into all these different hurdles that put you into a headspace of just, I'm a failure. I'm a complete failure. And realistically, it's because you never defined success in your own image in the first place.
Hmm. So what was the final straw that pushed you over the top,
Yep.
and
I
how
think,
come you didn't get all the way to the end?
yeah.
How come it didn't work? Put it that way.
Yeah. So I think the after the suicide attempt, after going through the Baker Act process, and after coming out of that on the side, I realized, okay, well, tried that out, wasn't for me. As simple as that. So like, all right, I got to find something else. It sounds a little morbid, but that's just the reality of the situation. Like, all right, so that's not it. So I guess we'll move on to this next thing. So I really got tired of denying that I had depression. It ran in my family. I knew better, but I neglected that. I neglected my own mental health for the longest time. So then I went through this process of trying some of these medications. Okay, oh, maybe it'll stable me out. Maybe I need to start asking for help. I need to at least do something different. And I went through the medications, and as much as it lowers your floor so that you don't feel as down and not that full Eeyore level that I was on the day to day, it also minimizes your ceiling, right? My potential was very much limited on these, and I was tired of kind of operating through a daze. So I really hyper focused on my own resiliency, my own clarity and confidence to figure out, okay, what does success really look like for me? And I have to focus on my controllables and my sphere of influence. If I'm focused on what I can't control and focus too much on what I'm trying to influence, it's beating your head against a wall. And for someone that's a little bit more sensitive like myself with depression, I have to be very tactful in what I decide to prioritize on the day to day. So, what better thing to prioritize than my own development? Whether that's in the physical health, like Joe had mentioned earlier, that could be the mental health and resiliency, that could be gaining, coaches and mentors, and removing toxic individuals from your circle and bringing in new blood that can help to raise you up. It was really a myriad of several different things. So it's hard to say that there was really one thing that pulled me out of it, but if I were to try and oversimplify that, it really was the hyper focus of my own development and being the superlative version of myself.
Hmm. So that's brought to pretty much where you are today, then.
Absolutely. Yeah. The focus of me getting to what I feel like is the superlative version of me. I want to help someone else get to that level. And there's 8 billion plus people on this planet. There's no one size fits all. There's no template. There's no secret sauce that you can really use. At least that's my belief, that every person is going to be able to say, okay, we all have the same key to unlock that door. I think, again, going back to Joe's point, the water, the exercise, things like that, these are all daily behaviors that help to build that resiliency and really to showcase that self-love that you need to pull yourself out of depression. Super, super helpful for sure. but I wanted to make sure that I took into account into my coaching that there's an individualization, there's a personalization that needs to happen in one's development. And to understand that, you got to work a little bit more one-on-one with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually from your perspective. Then is now you understand yourself. Then you know then how to look at somebody else and to understand their issues, to be able to give them some tools to be able to help them through what they're going through. Brilliant.
A 1,000%, because I was not who I needed to be in 2008 to set myself up for success, let alone try and help someone else. And,
Mm.
fast forward a decade plus later, I only got it right in my mind over the last several years to be able to help others. It goes back to your point. I wasn't who I needed to be in order to help others. I needed to figure out myself first.
Terrific. Shall we bring Joe in then?
Let's do it.
Welcome back, Joe.
Hey,
So-
what's going on, guys?
So, did you hear much of the conversation there we were having?
Yeah, I heard all of it.
Brilliant. So from your perspective, is AJ's been doing exactly what you've gone through yourself to get to where you are now, to be able to understand yourself, to put in place those processes, that system to be able to get yourself to where you are. So you guys kind of, although you come through a different from different aspects or from different backgrounds, you've both come through that depression through looking at similar routes to get out of it.
Yeah,
It's looking
absolutely.
in the mirror as opposed to avoiding it, right?
Yeah. So what would be one thing that you could give people to help them identify that they've got an issue to start with? Joe.
Well, if I was to give somebody one thing, one simple thing. Now, keep in mind, everything that I say is from a place of absolute love, from my heart. But love isn't lies, and love needs to be harsh sometimes. It's not easy to jump on a grenade to die for your friends or to take a bullet for somebody you care about in the act of love. And at the same time, it's also really difficult sometimes to tell people whom you love something that they might take offense to. And if you ever take offense to anything that anybody ever says, I think that's the first indicator that there's some sort of truth within yourself behind it. So, like, if somebody tells me that I talk too much and I get upset about it, there's probably some truth that I know internally that I talk too much. So if I was to tell somebody one thing, if you want to know your level of depression, or if you're depressed, or how you feel about life, look at yourself in the mirror naked, plain and simple. And this isn't just strictly a physicality thing, although that is incredibly important. I think that your physical body is a direct reflection of how you feel. Not all the time, not 100%, but a lot of it. I do believe that. And then you also aren't just looking at your body when you stare at yourself in the mirror naked. You're looking at your life. What does your life say about you? Are you completely satisfied with it? Is there any area of your life that you want to improve upon? And the more areas of your life that there are for you to desire to improve upon, then write them down and start to take action today, immediately. Build systems and habits. Start so small. Stop thinking about the 12-month game and think about the 12-year game. I just did a video a couple of days ago about how we impose so much anxiety on ourselves, which causes paralysis by analysis. And then we just want to go, watch porn or do drugs or drink or pop a pill because we're so overwhelmed with anxiety because we put these unrealistic timelines on ourselves. Nobody ever plays for the long game. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest basketball players ever, talks about how he wouldn't stress himself out about beating you next summer. He stressed himself out about beating you 3 summers from now, because he would find one thing wrong with his game, perfect it over the next 12 months, come back, play you again. And if there was another vulnerability, then he would identify it, work on it, extreme focus, improve it, come back the next year. And I think that when we stand naked in the mirror and we look at ourselves and we think about our life, one, our body is a great physical representation of the emotional state of somebody's character. But then two, the circumstances of your life. What are the actions of your life, the results producing? And if your actions aren't producing the results of the most fulfilled life imaginable, then you've got stuff to work on. There's probably some dissonance between that true self and the actual self.
So when I look in the mirror, this gorgeous exterior, I just know that there's an absolute train wreck going on underneath it.
I mean, but you see what you say there though is that when you're looking in the mirror, you see the truth.
Yeah.
Is what you really just said right there. So people get so hung up on my words because of the way that I speak sometimes, and it doesn't have to do with the actual word that I'm saying. I'm telling people to read deeper than that and seek the truth. And what you just said right there is behind this amazing, physical construct, which, that's awesome. You're like, there's a train wreck under there. But you're talking now, you just crossed over from the physical realm into the spiritual realm. You're seeking truth at that point and recognizing that there is some dissonance within your truth. So my next question to you would then be, what areas do you consider to be the train wreck? And what can we do to start to build systems and habits in place to get you to where you want to be?
Well, the train wreck side of it is the physical side. I 44 years under the colours, and as an infantry soldier, it's taken its toll on this old carcass of mine. But
Oh yeah.
but the more deeper thing, looking inside myself, I think one thing that I can say to people is learn to love yourself. If you're happy in your own skin, you're going a long way to being a physical and mentally okay with yourself. And if you're not feeling okay, it's okay not to be okay. And I think that's what you need to do. You just be true to yourself. And I think that's what I see when I look in the mirror. I know I'm physically I'm broken. I struggle at getting out of bed in the morning because my body's had it. But I get up at the morning and I just get on with it. And I think that's what the military side of me taught is you make it happen. And I think that's what the military does good, is it makes things happen. You just get on with it. And I think I've learnt to love myself. I think I'm great. and I think that's one thing that's really helped my mental well-being as well, is accept me for who I am. And I think that goes a long way to helping the rest of it up here, the mental side of it.
Yeah,
So AJ,
yeah.
a similar question for you then. What one thing would you give people to take away to start getting them on the road to being happy with who they are?
Yeah, Joe, some powerful points there. I'll go more of the short term here, and not that you need the validation, Tim, but we love you too. Just to throw that out there if it helps.
Thanks.
I'll go on the simplistic side and more of the like one day at a time for those that maybe aren't necessarily ready to look themselves in the mirror, because as someone again vulnerably that avoided the mirror for in some cases years at a time, you still got to find a way to be productive. You can only ignore it for so long. So for me it's a life wheel exercise, and what I do in this life wheel exercise is very simple. You create the slivers of importance that are in your life. So for me, it's the romance with my wife, it's my career, it's finances, personal mental growth, my emotional health, relationship I have with my friends, recreation, the physical health from what Joe's talking about, and you build this wheel out, and you just grade yourself 1 through 10. So it's simple as that. Okay. And I'm a visual person, so I have to actually draw this out. So I'll put it into this like little pie chart, and I'll have all these like little slivers of what's important to me, and I'll grade it. And what I found on there is that you might give yourself a little 5 here, 7 there, maybe even a 10 for something that's going really, really well. But then I just simply ask, okay, so again, this is a wheel, right? So take 4 of these and put this on your car. How well would it drive? What's your balance look like? right? And that's a big aha moment for someone that looks in the mirror but isn't necessarily as sharp as if you don't necessarily like the image that you see in the actual mirror, right? So it's another form of mirror work, and self-reflection for sure, but it's to understand where your imbalances are in your life. Where are you truly happy or unhappy? And then strategizing on where you can start filling in gaps. And I think a lot of people will separate things out. It says, okay, so I got to do this specific thing for my career, this specific thing for my friendships, recreation, whatever the case is. But the more that you talk through it, whether it's with yourself, with a coach, mentor, family member, or trusted resource, whatever the case is, you identify more and more that, well, I can do like these one or two things, and this will impact like half of my wheel or three-fourths of my wheel. An example would be, if you're going on a double date with another couple and you're going hiking, well, okay, that helps your physical health. That it's still a date, so there's still some romance involved, there's still some friendships, still some recreation. I mean, it's more intentional action that you're taking in your day-to-day life that says, I can do these one or two things, and it can help to not only increase where I'm sort of self-grading in my self-wheel, but I can also reestablish what that balance looks like for it as well. And then I put four of those joints on my car. It's a much smoother ride.
So that's really good. So that's two angles then to look at it. So you've got the pie chart. You can look at where you are, different aspects of your life, and where you kind of falling down. Then you can start building that up and work on that part. And then where Joe's looking in the mirror, that comes into it as well. So from your perspective then, AJ, how do you go about helping somebody out that comes to you that's struggling? What's the first thing you start looking for?
The first thing I start looking for is pattern recognition. What's going wrong in your life? What are you struggling with? What's making you unhappy? Why did you decide to book a session with me? Why did you decide to come talk to me about these issues? And you'll start noticing that as they convey more and more information of what's going on with them, what they're unhappy with, where they're very, very frustrated, they're very down on themselves, you'll start noticing it's like, okay, you're almost indirectly building out your wheel as you're telling me what's all going on and why you want to have this conversation in the first place. And it goes back to intentional action that says, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, we're talking through, you're not satisfied in your 9 to 5. Why is that? You're not satisfied in your relationship. You're not satisfied when you look in the mirror. You're not satisfied with your friendships and how people are treating you. And again, it goes back to that circle of influence. That's, I really want to hyper focus on what my controllables are and stay away from what I can't control and even what I can influence to start out, because that's sort of a trap there if you're not prepared for it. You got to establish a little bit of balance before you get too in the weeds when it comes to the influence part of it. But when you really focus on what you can control, you're focused on what serves you at that point, and you're not putting your success in someone else's hands. If you're saying that in order for you to be happy in your 9 to 5, for example, this person would need to be productive. Well, sure, you can go down the coaching road of, oh, well, what are you doing to help influence that? And what kind of relationship do you have with them? What are you doing to help solve the problem? That's where you get in the weeds of the influence. Whereas, okay, well, what would you need to do differently? What does your daily routine look like? What does your workflow look like? How are you taking control of the things that that would allow you to try and influence someone else, or determine your happiness or success based off of something that's not even within your control, period.
I like that. I like that. That, I think, hands over the responsibility to the person and that needs the help, is to give them ownership of their problem. Because I don't think anybody can help somebody else's problem or take somebody else's problems on. I think the individual has to accept responsibility for their own actions, for their own decisions on themselves, and for the likes of us is to give them that direction. So, Joe, would you do similar?
Similar but different. I immediately tell people that they need to take direct control and responsibility for their own actions. But the easiest thing for us to do as human beings is to take immediate action over our actual physical actions. I don't care what the client of mine is thinking. I don't care what the client of mine is feeling, because obviously the thinking and the feeling has gotten you to where you're currently at right now. I tell them you need to shut up and do push ups and do it now, because that causes them to live in the present moment. And I know it sounds crazy, right? It sounds like you're going to tell somebody who's suicidal to shut up and do push ups. Absolutely 100%. Because I've been there and I know exactly what a person who's really ready to kill themselves is going through. And I've dealt with a lot of other people. I've lost many friends to suicide. So, and overdoses and countless other things. And so when you tell somebody to shut up and do push-ups, one, it's a pattern disruption. I'm not interested in your little sob story or how you got to where you're at. And that's different from what the rest of society tells them. So it disrupts their neurological pattern and expectation. And then two, it causes them to take actual physical control of their hands, their feet. They actually begin to perform the measures that I'm telling them to do. It's elevating that neurochemical disposition within their body, which causes good feelings, which influences the thoughts, which influences the actions, as opposed to the thoughts influencing the feelings, which influences the actions. And it brings them into the absolute moment. You can't live in the future and falsely project. You can't go back into the past. You need to be here now, which creates a sense of presence. And that's what I tell people. I tell them, shut up and do exactly what I tell you to do.
That's brilliant. I think that is a really good point. If occasionally you come across somebody that's looking at doing something daft, and more often than not you try and talk them down or whatever. I think that's a really good approach.
Thank you. I do
Get
too.
off of
it
there.
Worked for me.
Get and do some push-ups, or get and do something physical. And I think that then you're right. It breaks that cycle. It takes them away from what they were thinking about doing. And then once you've broken that cycle, that's when you can start doing some work with them.
Absolutely. And for anybody who suffers from some sort of physical, beaten up, like, look, I've been beat up too, man. Like I spent 18 months in the brain injury clinic, I didn't get there by accident. And I tell people that if you're having trouble with, like, you can't do push-ups because you can't get down. All right, well, let's get you into the push-up position. I don't care how long it takes. Let's take our time. Let's not hurt yourself. But what we need to do is we need to start empowering you with control over your own actions and bringing you into the moment. And then ultimately we build out from there. But it requires a lot of push-ups, a lot of burpees, a lot of repetition at first, so we could build that momentum, just like a steam engine taking off. It requires a lot of power to get moving. But once that thing gets moving, man, once the spaceship leaves the atmosphere of the Earth, that pull of gravity, it requires the most thrust when it's closest to the Earth's surface. And then once it pushes past that ozone layer, it's easy sailing. And that's the power of compound momentum.
Brilliant. It's just like taking off in a car or a motorbike or at the start of a sprint. I mean, it's that initial burst of energy. And once you've got that burst of energy and you get the momentum going, then you can just about do anything once you get...
You can.
But it's getting going, and it's that initial burst of energy. It's that initial inertia to get things going. It's that bit of power to shove it along.
Which is why simplicity is so important. That's why it's just so important to keep it so simple that even a child wouldn't screw it up, even though kids happen to be more talented at these things than adults. But you understand.
Well, I think this has been terrific. So, Joe, how can somebody get hold of you if they want to chat? What's the easiest way of getting hold of you if they want to come on your program?
Yeah, best ways to reach me on Instagram, Joseph_Malone_official. And from there, we could talk. It's always me messaging back. And I recommend people join what I call the Lethality University, where we develop your mindset, we develop your discipline, your habits, your physical well being, your nutrition. I mean, dude, I've got some of the most world renowned nutritionists, neurologists, other special operations dudes and women as well from like the intelligence agencies. Everybody comes together in this community to help support one another and to develop habitual behavioral patterns to keep you and your loved ones safe. Because ultimately, you could have the greatest life, but if you get victimized by a violent criminal at least once, I mean, it could send you into a spiral of depression. It could be where a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of rape victims, a lot of physical assault victims, abuse victims end up in these depressive states. And it's very difficult to get out. It's probably the most difficult type to get out when you've been physically violated. And so we build up people's mental and emotional and physical resiliency by supporting one another and then teaching you all everything I learned as my time traveling the world as a special operations Marine. So Instagram, Joseph_Malone_official. Join the Lethality University. It's the best thing that you could do for yourself or your loved ones. I'm so sick and tired of hearing young women getting beat, physically assaulted, raped. I just did a course yesterday at the local university. All the women in the room raised their hand that they had been assaulted, harassed, stalked, or raped. All the women, 100%. It just
outrageous.
blows my mind all the time. Yeah. So, anyways, that's what we're doing.
Well, we put that down in the description. So, AJ, how do people get hold of you?
Yeah, pretty simple. It's the superlativeview.com. That's my site. It's got links to all my socials through TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. And you can even do booking for one-on-one coaching if you want to go deeper, even if it's just for a consultation call. So mine's pretty straightforward. Again, really, it's the hyper focus of one-on-one support, individualized, to make sure that we can tailor something that can help you and your unique journey.
Brilliant. Again, that'll be down in the description. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you very
Or
much.
today, where you are.
Thanks for hosting, Tim. And thank you for your service, Joe.
No
Thank you very
problem at
much.
all. Wow, what a great pair of guys. If you are struggling and you want some help, please reach out. You'll find all the descriptions down in the descriptions box below. So until the next time, until next week, for another show, TTFN. Ta-ta for now.